I'm Brett Rudy. I'm with Baseball is My Life. And I am here right now with Mick Wiggins, who is the illustrator for the newest backyard sports stamp being issued by the United States Postal Service coming out in 2021. Like, how did that even come about? How did you get involved in doing stamps? And
Yeah. Well, I'm an illustrator. I've been an illustrator most of my career. I started out as a art director at a computer magazine years ago. That wasn't exactly my strong suit, and illustrators were having a lot more fun than I were. Mostly been doing book covers and stuff for the last 15 years or something.
yeah,
But I'm always open to doing new things. And I've always been deeply jealous of my cohorts who did get stamps. And because stamps are like, I don't know, there's just a certain kind of respect you get. There's just something about them. They're always kind of the unicorn of assignments. I'd done a stamp associated project, and then I knew I was on their list. How illustrators actually come onto the radar of people who assign illustrations for stamps is a mystery. There isn't really a website you go to or you send your portfolios to. There's a handful of design groups who have these contracts or relationships with the United States Post Office. But frankly, it's mysterious. They said, would you like to? And we said, yeah. And then maybe a year or two later, they came back. And it's really fairly opaque what goes on behind the scenes. I think it's somewhat mysterious to them too. I've done some stamps before this one. So this was just another assignment. So it's very ordinary in some sense. They say they have this topic and here's the categories. That's where it starts, and it's an odd kind of assignment, frankly.
so within the Backyard Games series, there's 8 different illustrations: badminton, bocce, cornhole, uh, flying disc, croquet. I'm not even sure how to say it.
Okay.
Horseshoes, tetherball, and baseball, which I know has an interesting story that I
Yeah.
want you to get to in a minute.
I
But
think you forgot cornhole.
oh, cornhole, sorry, and cornhole. So are you saying you did not select those? The agency came to
Oh
you and
no,
said,
no,
hey, I'd like
no. They know what they want, and in fact, I've done the stamps that I've done before that. One series that has been out is the county fairs, county and state fairs, and they had a real laundry list of things they wanted to see, and it was a panorama that was broken down into 4 stamps. Then there was an amusement park ones. And they had a laundry list, and then you just try to fit it all together. This is my first assignment where they actually had a list of individual stamps, and the list kind of changed here and there. I started these stamps a couple of years ago, I think. Wasn't last summer? I think, yeah, it was going on 2 years ago. The last stamps I did took 4 years to come out. So you do it, and it takes up a chunk of time. Not a big, I would say in terms of actual work, eh, it's probably a 6-month process, because you'll work for a week and then you send off work in progress, and it goes off to meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings, and they don't get back to you for a couple of months sometimes, and then you get feedback. So, but it can go on for quite a while, though the amount of work is pretty modest, really, when it comes down to it. I explain that in the sense that I don't recall all the steps that happened, frankly. It was just one of those things, oh, we're going to do this now. But the baseball one is the one that had the most metamorphosed most than all of the other ones. We had one little, this has to do with the legal stuff going on, but it started out as wiffle ball, because wiffle ball is a backyard sport.
sure.
Baseball, we only switched from wiffle ball to baseball is because it turns out they were very squeamish about stepping on any kind of copyright or trademark toes. And they were afraid that there was some product that their wiffle balls have those signature holes drilled into a plastic shell. And there you go. And 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 we tried circles and slots and ones that weren't Whammo and Walmart and all those. We were just trying all different kinds and thought we had nailed it. Yeah, that looks good. They send it off and they come back, well, I don't know. And then it was like, oh, let's make it baseball. It's like, okay. We started making it baseball. And there's a second part B to that whole story. But this is why the baseball has the most hellacious screwball delivery that you could imagine on a baseball. Nobody's got gloves on, and no broken windows in the back. Not exactly a hardball kind of backyard sport, but that's all right. They're forgiven.
So the baseball that you originally developed, it looked like a wiffle ball. It had the holes in it, and then you had.
Yeah, I wish.
But no, it is interesting because the baseball, like you said, you can see the spinning of the ball, which only a wiffle ball would actually have. And like you
That's
said,
right. That was half the fun of the whole picture was this this spiraling thing. And but so what I'm talking about for the trademark sensitivities, my previous stamps, the amusement park ones, we'd make this fabulous thing. And then the lawyers would come in and saying, well, we can't really show that kind of ride because belongs to a manufacturer. So they don't want to use anything that was really out there. They wanted something that was kind of close, but not exactly like what you have seen or you can find pictures of, because those are manufactured things. So we would have to make up our version of a roller coaster, make our version of a egg beater thing and whatever, or signage, things like that. They had to, so in every project I've worked with the post office, as illustrators, we work off of references, photographic, posters, whatever commercial images there are with this stuff as references. How does this look,
So what did you use as a reference for this?
Well, I had to show them. I had about 10 or 12 pictures of baseballs and so forth, and I had to give them all over to the lawyers so they could examine my references and then my art, so they would have a defense lest they be sued by some manufacturer, and they could say, no, this was his references, and you can see that there's the incorrect proportion of stitches on this one than the one on yours. Right.
So you were talking about stitches before in an email to me earlier. You said originally this baseball had red stitches, and when I sent you the image, it was actually the first time you had seen that they removed the red and made it white. Do you think that was them taking some artistic liberty, or maybe legally they did not want it to look like a Major League Baseball?
I'm going to talk to my client, Greg, about this because this is one of those clients. Well, it's funny as an illustrator. Illustrators are very fussy, and I'm included, about anybody else altering the stuff that I do, that I would work on. And I so much prefer, if you want those stitches to change colors, that's fine. I'll do the work. But somebody else did the work on that part, and that surprised me. But I will say I'm not going to complain because I enjoyed working with Greg and his company, and I enjoyed working with the post office. So I'm not complaining, folks, if you're listening. But it happened as a surprise to me. It was like, wow, look at this. They're playing softball now.
Right.
Because that's the only kind of stitched ball I've ever seen that has white stitches. I don't know. Have you ever seen a baseball with white stitches? I've seen black. I've seen black and red.
Yeah, I've seen black and red as well. No, that's a great question. But yeah, let me ask you this. So from a design standpoint, I was looking at the press release that the USPS sent out. And you talked about Greg Breeding being the art director. So you've talked about him some, but it also listed Mike Ryan as
Ah,
the designer of the stamps. So I
right,
guess what I'm unsure of, and the viewers of this video who are
right.
watching, what are really all the differences between the different creative roles? I mean, clearly you did the illustration, I understand that, but what does designed the
I
stamps
don't know.
mean? Did they just plug on USA Forever at the bottom and then get design credits,
Oh,
or was
that,
there more to
I
it?
don't know. I don't know, Brett. Like I say, it's not a very, now as we were talking, I'm going, oh yeah, Greg is my contact there. And Mike is the principal designer there. But I never, as far as I remember, ever directly talked to Mike. So I always sent all my art, all my sketches, all my intermediary things to Greg, and he would share them in meetings. Now, was that make Greg an account holder, a manager, or is he a creative? I don't know. And then they have to get their, uh, they have a, they probably have a team there, and then they probably get their ducks in order, and then they have a meeting with the post office. And whether they have to fly to Washington and do this, I don't know. The other thing, you'll see that the tether ball, we had a lot of revisions on the tether ball because, well, what do you know? You put any lines on a tether ball and they're going to look similar to some other manufacturer of tether ball. And so they just erased the seams on the tether ball just so they wouldn't get into trouble.
Interesting.
Same way with the birdie. We had to go with the old shuttlecock design rather than any kind of plastic feather tying. There's things like that, you know. They're just super, super, super sensitive about copyright infringement. And well, they should be, because I can imagine that if they did make a mistake, lawyers would, from somebody who's been infringed upon, would see deep pockets there.
Sure. Was it completely up to your discretion how
Uh,
to illustrate those, or did they provide further instruction to you?
no, typically, you know, they had to be kind of telling a story, narrative in some sense. You know what's going on. When you just have this little window of a shape, make it simple enough so you know what's going on, that it's pleasant to see, that it works big and small at the same time. There's all kinds of little kind of creative things like that. But I would say that with each stamp, there was probably about 5 or 6 versions of viewpoint, shapes, foreground, background, that kind of thing. So I give them a wide range of options. They'll check one that they like best, and then we go to work on refining those. And there's probably about 2 or 3 versions of that in generational stages. But they don't really like say, yeah, we need this palette, we need this, you know. Actually, I was given a lot of freedom in a lot of ways. Style-wise, this was an interesting one to try to do because, well, balls are kind of featureless in some ways. You know, they're just spheres, and then you have the players, but we essentially didn't want players to be up front. They wanted the actual sport item to be up front, so you can sort of see all those right there. But they tend to take up a lot of space. And then so how do you kind of make it all action, especially if it's all foreshortened, as they say, if you know what I mean? It's like when you portray something foreshortened, it means that it's lined up and all you have is big and small to tell you about how far away something is. Whereas if you rotate it around, you have a much better idea about scale. And so, but no, design-wise, color-wise, they left me alone, but there's not a whole lot there. It's just a square with the
Sure.
with the forever on the bottom, and they look
Would
good. This is one of those things where by the time you're finished with something, in general, in my case, I'm pretty tired of looking at them and fretting over every little mark, every little grass blade, or those stitches just were kind of like, they seem like a simple thing, but how do you make them look like they're really wrapping around and dimensional without
Sure.
getting crazy, you know? And so it's like, all right. But so you're really tired of them at the end of the process. And so when I got to see them yesterday, it was like, not too bad, not too bad. I would have liked to seen seams on that tetherball, but you know, can't have everything. And come on, red seams on a baseball.
You got it. Yeah.
That's a that's a gimme, but that's okay.
These have just really captured really the nostalgia of being in your backyard and playing these games with your family, and
Right.
how it's really important to just take a breath and stop your busy lives and get
Yeah,
outside and have some fun, because everything that is depicted on these stamps you can play in your backyard
yeah,
with games that'll cost you like $20 at uh, the
right.
local store where you can pick up the supplies, and anybody can play these sports. You know, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how old you are or how athletic you are. Maybe for the baseball one it takes a little bit more um, athletic ability, especially if it's a wiffle ball and it's curving all
yeah,
over the place. But
yeah.
you know, these really are games that anybody can play, and they are so simplistic. And I think you've done a really good job of just sort of capturing that. I mean, even the color scheme, it just feels like it's a nice spring day,
Good,
and I
good,
kind
good.
of just want to get in my backyard and play.
Well, that's actually good. You know, you'd be surprised. You know, it's like, uh, you know, when you're illustrating something for you say a book cover or a product or something like that, you would think that you would get all kinds of feedback, you know, and you don't. It just often, you know, just like, oh, this is exciting. I've never worked on this before. And you do it, and it's like, I kind of like it. I did a good job. Yay. And they paid me, and they must have liked it. And then it disappears. And it's like, well, on to the next job. You don't get much feedback as an illustrator, frankly. And it's really gratifying to hear. Everything you just said was like, that's exactly what I was looking for, you know. And just as a crafts person, you just go, oh, good, somebody actually likes it. It's like
Right.
that. Yeah, that's nice. And so that's actually very gratifying. It's very like, oh, okay. And so you forget that actually people do see your work and sometimes even appreciate it, you know. So uh, I'm such a fan of the post office. I think they're just awesome. I've always been awesome. And so anytime they come knocking, I'm their guy. If the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame wanted me to do something, I would seriously, I would hang up that shingle again and do something for them for sure. But
What medium are you used to illustrate these? Are these in ink or pen and ink?
no, these are digital.
Okay.
Um, I have a long history of, I was a painter when I started doing this, but everything starts out as drawings and then it moves to a digital platform. And I was, uh, uh, I was an art director for PC World magazine and Macworld magazine, attached to them in 1982, 83, 84, back in the Bay Area. And I started working with computers very early on and got roped into using the computer even in its black and white pixel days. And that part of my um, toolkit stayed. And I've just been working digitally, really kind of full time digitally, probably from 87, maybe 86, 1986. So it's been digital the whole time. And, but I kind of worked pretty hard at trying to keep it fairly painterly and fairly organic looking rather than digital look.
Sure.
And so that's why they look fairly painterly or fairly, what is that? You know, it is ambiguous that way.
Yeah, I mean, it almost has that feeling of like chalk on the sidewalk, you know, with the colors a little bit
Yeah, there's some
muted and
pastel looking.
pastel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which even more conveys the sort of playing outdoor look. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it sort of
It
comes
seems to
across.
be, well, the kind of little bit of summery washed out stuff rather than the real, yeah, it was kind of a nostalgic feel. You know, there's nostalgia. color palettes and stuff tend to be a little dusty and warm, you know, rather than
Sure.
vivid and dark and all that. And they tend to be a little, have a infused with a kind of, you know, nostalgic glow. And so um,
Well, you said that they paid you. Did they mail you a letter at least, or did they send it
they
electronically?
mailed me a check. Can you believe that?
Did
This
it
is
have a
like,
stamp on it, or was it metered?
that's a great question. I think it was metered, but it was, you know, I'm not, they pay well. Let me put it that way, because they're buying all rights. Okay. And so, that's like the most expensive route you can go. That's like a tricked out Mercedes kind of thing. It's like, because they want it all. I can't sell it. I can't do anything with these images. I can't make a poster. I can put them on in my portfolio, but I can't print postcards and send them out to clients to say, look at what I did. I'm just self-promotion, limited self-promotion I can use, but I can't touch them at all. And so they own them lock, stock, and barrel. And in doing so, they pay for it all. And so, well, there's 8 stamps. And it's like, so I was just astonished, you know, it's like hey, I got a letter from the post office, you know, and you'd open up, what are they doing sticking a check in the mail? You know, it's like, don't they have computers? But
That's their business.
they're consistent.
Yeah.
They're staying with what works fine. But it's like, why do they go all the trouble? You know, because they do go to a lot of trouble. You know, hiring illustrators, investing in that, hiring when they could just do that flag stamp. They have 3 models, you know, and just use that over and over again.
I think it's part of history. It's part of Americana, you
I
know?
think so. Their commitment to that, the historic. There are a lot of people who do still collect stamps. I've gotten letters from people and who wanted a signed sheet and this and that, and which is just so great, just so great. But so there are people who really buy them and enjoy the editions. I've learned that, you know, that first set, you get a lot of, so people will buy these and they'll continue to buy them, and that's fantastic. But it's a lot of trouble they go to. I mean, if only just to pay for that team of lawyers, you know, who are going over every little stitch in the baseball to make sure that it's like, I don't know, Jim, what do you think? I don't know. That red is troublesome. It just cracks me up.
Well, thank you so much, though, for talking with me today. I think this was really fantastic, and I appreciate your time.
Well, I wish it was a little bit, I had more sports cred for you to work with on this. Maybe I'll get a call from the Cornhole Association about, you know, them being spotlit. I think this was an earlier wiffle ball, but you get the idea. Um, um,
Ah,
so you just see the two. I don't see our screen, but you don't have anything in front of it. So this was, it may have not been the very final. I see some little things that makes me think that this was we were trying to work it out. And these holes look surprisingly unfinished. So I don't think this was a final thing. We'd kind of gone back from slots to this and that. And, but we went to baseball, and I think this was an intermediate version. I see that it's on layers, working on those stitches. So it wasn't finished, but you can sort of see what happened. And that was, I'd used not a deep red, you know, I wanted to keep this color the same as this color. So you do this thing when you're making a picture, you're kind of aware of recurring patterns and colors. So you go primary one, second. So the eye naturally dances around, you know, purple to purple, yellow, yellow, you know, these little tricks and stuff. So It was an in-between stage.
So, you know what I've just noticed for the first time? And I didn't notice it until you showed it to me like this.
Hmm.
When I see the wiffle ball art, it
Yeah,
appears as if the pitcher is throwing the ball to me, towards me.
right,
But when I saw it with the baseball on the screen, not the one with the red stitches,
right.
but the one with the white stitches,
Yeah.
it appeared as if the thrower was throwing the ball towards the barn, towards the people, and the person with their arm
Get out.
was awaiting the ball.
Really?
In fact, I didn't even notice it until you showed it to me like this,
Yeah. Well, you
that
know
they were
what?
throwing it
What is
towards me.
this? You don't know what this is?
Is it a
A
driveway?
wiffle ball bat. Wiffle ball bats are yellow.
Oh, see, now that you've
So you are
mentioned
the
that, it's so obvious.
so
But
you are the batter. That was the whole point, was like you're the, they're throwing it to you. And so
see, the way it was cut, it looks like it's the driveway. Like it looks like,
well, I know this is the best way, you get this is myopia, and it happens, all the time. Uh,
because
I
they cut
know that
that.
I've been burned with that a lot over the years, where like you know what you're showing, and then somebody will come in and go, well, you know, why is that? And what do you mean? It's like, then you just realize, oh yeah, from that, oh,
Right
then
now, I'm trying to
you
find.
just ruined it for me. Now I'm going to see it as a driveway. I'm sorry. You can bring up the white stitches again. I want to see it now.
Yeah, you know why? Because here's why. When they printed the stamp, they took the yellow out of the bat, and now it's brown. So because of the fact that it's brown, so because of the fact, I'm going to share my screen
You
now.
got color too.
Um, so because of the fact that this is
Oh,
brown and not yellow, it looks like he's throwing from the driveway because he's very small here. So I can't tell that he's throwing towards me. And because he's throwing towards the driveway, it looks like he's throwing from the outfield back into the infield.
oh, okay, that works. I don't
That's
mind. But
that.
that's weird anyway.
But then when you tell
There
me,
should be a glove, don't you think? You know,
if you see this in the stamp, if you see this as he's throwing towards me, you will not be able to stop seeing that he's seeing towards me. But if you look at it as they're throwing towards the infield, you will not be able to stop seeing that he's throwing it towards the infield. And I
yeah,
think it's because of the fact that they changed the color of the wiffle ball bat to be the color of a unpaved
yeah.
driveway.
To me, the values of the baseball, very light,
Yeah,
pale gray, and then the pale sky in the background, they kind of merge together if you squint a little bit, make it blurry. And the thing that would gonna like make that baseball pop is red stitching,
I
you know.
agree.
And
Now that
so
I've seen,
if that stitching was red, that would be so, it would be a more complete image, and you wouldn't care whether they're throwing to the infield or throwing at somebody holding a bat, bunting it or whatever. But um, uh, I was really thinking about when you pitch wiffle balls, you really like it to, do those crazy curves it does. And so there you go.
but that was really fantastic to see the stages and how it's been transformed
Yeah.
um, and man, just to see how much goes into this, it's just really
Yeah.
remarkable.
You're going to
Well,
make me think about this image quite a bit now.
but you know what? That's the whole fun of it. Like, look, I mean, I'm a collector as well. You know,
Okay.
I collect all sorts of things. I have 200 baseballs on my wall. I got
You're a busy guy.
yeah. I just love this stuff, and these are really the types of things that people stare at and they just wonder about. And I feel like we've now answered questions that people will be talking about for the next 100 years. I mean, you started this conversation by, you know, talking about the nostalgia of postage stamps and why don't they just print flags? It would be so much easier. And
Yeah.
like, this is exactly why. You know, these are the
Yeah.
stories
It's true.
that
It's
continue
true.
for decades. People can continue to talk about this and try to figure out what you were thinking as you put this together. And
Yeah.
now we know.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of the, I think, I had a fine art training, but I'm trying to look for that word that it doesn't make you very useful in the world, just to learn how to make art. So commercial art, on the other hand, it was like it and tapped into that. How many times have you were probably a baseball card collector?
I was back in the day.
Just a hunch, and so how many times did you go through the cards? And now when you look at a card from the 70s or the 80s, whenever that was for you, it's got a stylized quality to it. Just like you go back to the cards from the 60s or the 50s. The paper, the way the corners are, the way the lines are, the color palettes and stuff like this, they change with the era, and they are all very evocative. And illustrators do that. It's like they say, well, this we're talking about the Dust Bowl now. So you kind of go back to Dust Bowl colors and whatever the public imagination or historical cloud tells you what that feels like. And so you start using those signs and signals, not in a cynical way, but because it evokes these feelings that we all seem to share. And so when you find yourself making pictures that are sharing these archetypes, and you know that it's going out into culture and it's playing in that playground, it's playing on that field. When you're so I make a cover for a book, and let's say it's The Grapes of Wrath, and so many school kids are reading that. They get that in high school, Grapes of Wrath and Penguin Classics paperbacks. I've heard this actually. This is like personal story where now somebody will say, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I pull out the Steinbeck because that's a well-known thing. And they go, I had that in school. And that they held it, they used it every day. They read it, they looked at the cover, and their imprint now of John Steinbeck is this image that I made for that book. And all of a sudden, I'm part of this story of culture, a story of Americanism, and this kind of like this giant author. I'm kind of connected to him. I'm connected to this and their story and their memories of their youth. And it's really like, wow, that's a really interesting dividend for just making pictures for money. It's like, I'm into culture. In some small way, I'm part of that, the ocean that we all swim in. And it's like, you don't sit there and think about that a lot, but it comes up. And maybe because stamps are so mythical in their own way, that's why it makes it thrilling for illustrators I got to do a stamp. Damn,
I mean, they'll never be able to take that away from you.
good job. Yeah,
So,
anyway, there you go.
well, Mick, thank you so much. This was awesome. Good to get the stories of what goes into this. And I look forward to the stamp actually coming out. I mean, who knows? Maybe it actually will print in red. Maybe this is just a preview and this is not what the final design will look like. Maybe when it's all done, it'll be, T-ball instead.
It'll be what it is. It's just like you can't control everything, and that's probably a good thing. So
very good. Well, Mick, thanks
very
again.
nice
I appreciate it.
talking with Brett. Let's keep in touch. And anyway, Brett,
pleasure.
bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.